Well, it is time for a sequence for examining data. The first one is the anti-behaviorist, instructional strategist, pre-test and post-test, and learning times, and instructional procedures. So let's talk about this one by one. The first one is the anti-behaviorist. First, after removing data from any defective item, you should examine the remaining data with regard to the anti-behavior of learners. And then, you make a questions out that did the learners in the formative evaluation have the anti-behavior you anticipated? If they did, why? And if they didn't, why? And you give reasons. And for example, if they did succeed but didn't have the required anti-behavior, then you must question whether you have identified critical anti-behaviors. And the second is instructional strategies. The next step is to examine the instructional strategy as associated with the various objectives with which learners had difficulty. And was the planned strategy actually used in the instructional material? Are there alternative strategies that might be employed? The final step is to examine the material themselves to evaluate the comment about problems areas made by learners, interaction, and subject matter experts. And the third one is the pre-test and post-test. And the third step is to review the pre-test and post-test data as displayed on the instructional analysis chart. By comparing pre-test with post-test scoring objective by objective, which is usually what is done when you examine the instructional analysis chart, you can assess learners' performance on each particular objective and begin to focus on specific objective and the related interactions that appear to need revisions. And the fourth is learning times. An important concern if any informative evaluation is the amount of time required by students to complete the instructional materials. It may be necessary for you to revise the materials to make them fit within the particular times period. This is an extremely difficult task, and it must be done with great care. And the last one is instructional procedures. There are procedures concerns that can be controlled where were learners hindered by logistics required to use material, were there questions about how to proceed from one to step next, and were there long delays in process. These are kinds of implementation procedural problems that often are identified in questionnaire and delivering discussions. Solutions to such problems must be found and incorporated into either the instructions or the instructions manual to make the instructional activity run more smoothly. Revisions process. We suggest that you begin as the revision process. You summarize your data as suggested in this chapter. We recognize that the need of instructional designers will differ according to the type of material with which they are working. However, the strategy suggested here should apply to almost any instructional design effort. And given all the data from a small group or field-type evaluation, the designer must take decisions about how to make revisions. It is almost always appearance where the problems are, but it is not always appearance what change should be made. If a comparison of several approaches has been embedded in the formative evaluations, then the result should indicate the type of change to be made. And otherwise, the strategies suggested for revising instructions following to one evaluations also apply at this point, namely, use the data, use experience, sound learning principle as the basis for your revisions. Now it's time for revising selected materials. When working with selected materials, you may, however, there is little opportunity to revise the materials directly, especially if they are commercially produced and copyrighted. And with copyrighted material, the instructors can consider the following adaptations for future titles. And the first is omit portions of interactions and simply develop supplementary interactions and include other available materials. And the procedures for the use of materials should also be reconsidered in likes formative evaluations data. Now it's time for the last material is about revising instructor-led interaction. The first is Interactions Working Fragment Interactions Guide have the same flexibility as a developer for changing interactions. A pretest and post-test, together with an attitude questionnaire, should provide data for true analysis of the interactions. Summary table that indicate performance on each objective should be prepared. Examines learners' performance on test item and objective, and then relate learners' performance by objective to the interactional analysis diagrams. And the next is the instructions notes from the guide should reflect questions raised by learners and the responses to those questions. Learners' questions should be examined to determine whether basic misunderstandings have developed, were the responses to the questions sufficient to provide adequate performance by learners on the related test items. Analysis. Unlike using written instructional material, the instructor can revise the presentations during its implementations and note the reason for the change. When you change one component of the systems, you are changing the whole systems. You need to be aware, therefore, that when you make changes through the revisions process, you cannot assume that the remaining unchanged interactions will necessarily maintain its initial effectiveness. You may hope your changes are for the better, but you cannot assume that they are always are. This is the last part that I can say. Thank you so much for your attention for watching my video.